I'm Jon Heisterberg. I grew up in northern Indiana, and I guess I got interested in wildlife after I kind of bombed out in electrical engineering in Purdue University. So I always had an interest in hunting when I was a kid, and I thought that would be kind of a neat career. So I switched from electrical engineering to wildlife ecology. I graduated from Purdue University in 1971 and couldn't find a job. So it's not unusual, even back then, there just weren't any jobs. So I ended up volunteering with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I was going to Alaska to work on a bear program. And then like 2 days before I was ready to go to Alaska, Fish and Wildlife Service called me up and said, "Oh, we just got a technician job that came open, and we thought of you because you had volunteered." So it was pretty fortuitous for me because they had hundreds of applicants, and because I had volunteered, I got this offer. Went up to North Dakota, worked on a wildlife refuge for 4 or 5 months, and then I had an opportunity to go in the Peace Corps to Africa. And so I resigned my position with Fish and Wildlife Service, which probably is pretty unusual. You hate to give up a permanent job like that. But I wanted to have some adventure. I'd never been outside of Indiana hardly, been to Canada, I guess. So at that time, we had a Smithsonian connection with the Peace Corps. And so the Smithsonian supported me. I was interested in small mammals and that, so they gave me like 300 or 400 of these special museum traps, and I did a lot of small mammal trapping and bat trapping, and I probably sent back 300 or 400 specimens of animals. I ended up going to Burkina Faso, which is in West Africa, and my position was to do park development on a newly created national park. And this was like 1971. So here I have all these traps, and I distinctly remember setting up like 100 mouse traps all over. And an elephant had gone through my trap line and crunched, just completely destroyed like 20 of those traps. But I caught a lot of interesting stuff. I caught a bat that missed that had only been captured 3 places before, and this was a range extension of like 2,000 miles or so. Actually did a publication on that one. So anyway, then I came back. When I was working in Africa, I communicated with my past professors in Purdue University, and we set something up that when I was there I would do wildlife surveys and fauna and flora surveys. So I came back and I did my master's at Purdue University too on African wildlife. This is going to sound kind of strange, but when I got to North Carolina in 1989, I guess I was 40 years old, and I developed a close relationship with a lobbyist who worked for the Farm Bureau, the State Farm Bureau. She was the lobbyist for the state legislature. They have a federal lobbyist for Congress, and they have one for the state legislators. And so I used her kind of as my mentor, and she taught me a whole lot of stuff on how to get things accomplished through politics, basically. And at that time, I've never been too afraid to go out and stick my neck out, so I kind of kept it under the radar because agencies don't like you politicking for your own program, but it worked out pretty well. I got my fingers slapped a few times, but anyway, she was a very good mentor for me on how to work with people. And obviously, if you're a lobbyist, you have to be able to get along with people and know how to get them to come to what you want them to do. And so she helped me out quite a bit. I've had other ones too, but I won't go into those. I guess the biggest thing now is, and probably a lot of people would say this, is we're dealing with a lot more people now, and with social media and getting the correct facts out can be a real challenge. And just a good example, I guess, is the Trump administration now with all the alternate facts and using social media. And President Trump will put out a tweet that is obviously a bunch of baloney, but 2 million people follow it and believe it. And so how do you counter that? And it's very difficult. I know back when I was doing controversial type things, somebody would write an editorial in the newspaper, and then if you responded to it, an editorial, then it would just go back and forth and you wouldn't get anywhere. So I think it's probably best just to at least maybe if it's a big enough controversy, get your agency involved and they can put out a statement, that type of thing. Well, I was thinking, good advice as far as getting a position would be to volunteer. That's basically how I got my start. You get your foot in the door, and when I was administrator, we probably hired a dozen or so kids from NC State, mostly because our office was at NC State area, and we got to see the work that they did, and so then we figured out ways to get them permanent. So that, volunteering is a good way. I think it's real important, like, to be a member of, like, the Wildlife Society. I think that's just a fantastic way for you to get to know other people, especially like if you're with the Wildlife Resources Commission. You have a dozen different agencies and employers that come to these employees that come to these things, and you get to see and meet other people outside of your agency that you don't have exposure to, and certainly you can use the Wildlife Society as a way to maybe address an issue that you can't personally address because of you being constrained by who you work for, but you certainly can through the Wildlife Society. So that's been very valuable for me. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but back in about the mid-90s, we had a Russian exchange program with the Russian National Park Service. And Carl Betzel and I and a few other people went to Russia for a month, and then we brought some over here. And it was pretty neat. It was a great opportunity, and made the Wildlife Society look really good. We would teach them how to bore trees and I taught them how to mist net birds and that type of stuff. And then when they came over here, we took them out to blow up some beaver dams and things like that. So it was, the Wildlife Society has been very, very good to me. So, and I've been a member since I came here in 1989. I was on the board and I was president and all that back in the late 1990s. I got a couple, but I guess probably the most interesting was just here. I'd never been outside the United States, and I go to Africa and as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I got D's and F's in French in high school, but I was forced to learn French because that was the national language in Burkina Faso in West Africa. And after living 3 years by yourself, I was the only American, certainly the only person that spoke English within 100 kilometers where I lived. And so you're forced to learn the language, and they had local language too. But elephants were the big game species there. We had lions and stuff like that too. But I've got all kinds of stories of getting chased by elephants. And in fact, I'll just mention one real quick. I remember August 3rd, 1972. I mean, obviously, people don't remember dates unless something special happened that day. But I'd been in Africa about 4 months, and I was with a park ranger, and we saw a group of 8 elephants. And they knew we were there. They could smell us, and they were pretty upset. They weren't used to people at all. And so what the elephants do is they get in a circle and then face outwards. So you got the big adults, they're facing outward, and then they put their young in the center to kind of protect like that. And so they're like this, and we got about 50 yards away on foot, walking, myself and this park ranger. And then they turned around and started wandering off, and he said, "Watch this." And he got a big stick and started banging it against the tree. And as soon as he did that, they all stopped, but one of them stopped and just turned around and was just down on top of us within about 6-7 seconds. I mean, those things can really run fast. And when they run, they flare out their ears, and it looks like a freight train coming at you. I just about, what? And so when an elephant charges at you, you don't run straight away. They get horrible eyesight, but they can really smell well. But so he scurried off this way. I scurried off this way, and got right to where we were standing. Just seconds. And it was a she, and of course I was down on the ground and just watching this thing, like, my God. And she took a tree. I'll never forget. It was like this big round, just ripped the tree out. Just was all upset, going back and forth. And when they flare out those ears, it just scares the dickens out of you, And so then finally we got away. So, but I had a lot of kind of close calls with African wildlife, but it was exciting stuff. I used to see how close I could get to them, and it was kind of like a game to me. And I try to, if you can stay downwind of an elephant, you can walk, you can get 20 yards away. Just you have to be real quiet, and you make sure you stay downwind. But when they look at you, if you don't move, they can't distinguish you between you and a tree or something. So anyway. My first job was in research. I worked for 9 years with Fish and Wildlife Service, and then got switched over to USDA. Then I came to North Carolina in 1989, and we built up the program based on state funding from the Wildlife Commission and from the DOT, and then we were able to get some federal funding. Well, so we had all these people working for us. At one time we had like 50 people that were full-time, and we lost a big piece of funding. We lost our federal, like $250,000 in federal funding. And so we had to go through all the routine of figuring out, well, who we're going to let go. And it was just a horrible situation. And fortunately, we had a number of meetings, and we were able to get a game plan together, and we were able to save pretty much everybody's jobs, except for a few by attrition that just left. But that was pretty stressful because, we had gotten the money, and then they were permanent employees, but we'd have to let them go because there just wasn't any more funding. So had many a sleepless night because of that, but it worked out okay. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Delegating, so you let them do a project completely on their own, and of course you're there to help out and stuff when they have issues. But after the last 10 years of my employment, it was 10 times easier on me because I would delegate all this authority downward, and the biologists or whoever did the work, they would have that chance to have a whole project under their own belt and do the whole thing themselves. And then if it was successful, which hopefully it would be, they would get the credit for it. If it was unsuccessful, they learned from that. And it was so much easier as me as a manager. And then I saw later on, like our district biologists that would come to work for us, and that that they would have the same problem. They want to not delegate. And I did everything I could to give them examples. I said, well, you're going to be 10 times more successful. Your employees are going to be more successful. So I think that was something I overcame. Yeah, I guess, again, the African stuff was pretty neat. I had kind of a split personality when I was working for Fish and Wildlife Service because I developed toxicants to kill animals. And then on the flip side, I also saved endangered species. So I had a project in Puerto Rico for 2 years to save an endangered bird called the yellow-shouldered blackbird. There's only about 150 left in the world. And my tact was to trap shiny cowbirds. Shiny cowbirds were parasitized in the nests of these yellow-shouldered blackbirds, and they were getting no nesting success at all, like 5% nest success. So we went in and trapped like 3,000 shiny cowbirds. And we've got shiny cowbirds in Florida too, by the way. They moved up from South America, and they kind of puddle jumped on the Caribbean islands till they made it up into Florida. And I think we might even have some in North Carolina now. So that was a neat project. But then at the same time, my last project with USDA was figuring out how to kill massive numbers of birds with contact poisons. And we had switched from Wildlife Services, USDA Wildlife Services. Previous to that, we were part of Fish and Wildlife Service. In 1986, politicians got us to switch to agriculture because they felt we weren't doing enough to help the farmers in that. And so the year that we switched, we had all these, this APHIS administrator kind of gave us directions that we want you to kill blackbirds, and preferably in a roost where you get, a million birds all at the same time, and figure out a way to do that. So one of my last projects was developing a contact toxicant where you spray on the birds at night with a helicopter. And we went all over the country looking for a place to do this, and the only place we could do it was in Mississippi. They're the only ones that had the low enough environmental laws, I guess, and so we sprayed this roost, and first pass over the roost was actually over me. I was standing next to the birds, and we ended up, killed 200,000 or 300,000 birds. But thank goodness we stopped doing that. That was all politically motivated. And we got back on track after a couple of years. I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but when I was going to college during the summer, I got a job working with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. It was 1968, and I was between my freshman and sophomore year. We lived in this little ramshackle place that was owned by the state, and my job was trapping raccoons. And so, I trapped 50 or 60 raccoons and earmarked them and everything. One day I caught one, and I saw him. He was in the trap, and I thought, my God, I injured the heck out of this thing, because I said, I came back that lunchtime, and I told my biologist, I said, God, I trapped this poor raccoon, and right through his belly there's a bone sticking out like this big. I said, it looks like it broke off its hip bone. And he almost fell out of the chair laughing, because it is funny. Obviously it was an os penis of the raccoon, but I said, man, I don't know how the hell I did that. But, so anyway, that's pretty funny. I think, you've got to obviously be a good communicator. I think it helps to be not be afraid to put yourself out there, take chances. even like when you get up into mid-management stuff, you get more involved in politics and stuff. And I was very successful because I remember numerous times when I was trying to get funding for our program from the state, I would kind of hang out at the legislative building when the legislature was in session, and I'd kind of walk up and down the hallways, wait until I could grab a legislator to kind of burn their ear on what we needed and why we needed it, you know. And it worked out fine. Now you have to be kind of careful when you do that kind of stuff, but I think that's, you know, as much as we may not like it, politics is how a lot of these things get supported and get done. And the other thing I always try to do, and anybody can do this, like when I'm on an airplane, or like my wife and I were just in Dallas, Texas a couple of days ago, staying at a bed and breakfast, and you know, I was a couple of people there that you know, had no inkling of anything about wildlife. And so I just was visited with them, and I told them about some of the different things that we had done in that. And they were just extremely surprised. And I think every chance we get that, you know, as a profession, our folks, if we can just kind of say our story on a personal basis, I think that, because they'll remember that, especially if it's a wild enough story. Because just like today, earlier, you know, there's, you know, we hang out with other wildlife biologists, but you know, 99% of the public have no idea that there's even such a thing as wildlife management. So if you can take that opportunity, it's a great way to sway people's opinions. And then also, you know, get involved and give talks to schools and that. I mean, elementary school teachers and middle school teachers and high school, they're always just chomping at the bit to get somebody to come in and talk. And I think that's a real positive thing that we can do too. I don't think so, other than that I really enjoyed my tenure here in North Carolina, and I enjoyed working with the fellow professionals with the Wildlife Society. I think we've done a fantastic job with growing the program, and I really like, you know, the format here that it was set up so that students in that can kind of interact with some of the other old codgers and that. So, but anyway, keep up the good work.